Give me 1 second. All right, I will get this started again. So just a quick intro about Bhante. Bhante Sanatha Vihari is a Mexican American Theravada monk who's currently residing at the Empty Cloud Buddhist Monastery in New Jersey. He's a student of the late Dr. Madhavala Punnaji Thero, and he's a founder of Casa di Bhavana, an outreach project to bring the Dharma into Spanish-speaking world. Prior to becoming a monk, Bhante served in the Air Force for 9 years and was deployed 3 times. At the age of 30, Bhante was ordained as a novice in the Theravada tradition at Sarachandra Buddhist Center in North Hollywood, California. Also, he devoted his time for 8 years in teaching Buddhism for Dhamma-Based kids at the Sarachandra Buddhist Center. In 2018, he received his higher ordination at Maharagama Bhikkhu Training Center in the lineage of Amarapura Nikaya. Bhante has a Bachelor of Arts degree in religion and a Master of Science degree in counseling psychology from Sorry about that. Bhante has a Bachelor of Arts degree in religion and a Master of Science degree in counseling psychology from Mount St. Mary University. Bhante is also a certified facilitator in mindfulness-based substance abuse treatment for adolescents and mindfulness in recovery. There's a lot more to say about Bhante. That's just a little bit about him in a nutshell. Today, he's going to talk to us about living in harmony at home and society and how to manage the conflict that arises in these relationships. With that, I would like to hand this over to Bhante. Bhante.
Thank you so much, CK. And first and foremost, I would like to thank everyone that made this event possible. I was really wishing when I was in New Mexico that I could do this in person, but things kind of happened after I was already gone, or when I was about to leave, we found out about this beautiful community. So I'm so happy and thankful for this invitation and to connect with more devout Buddhist practitioners, followers of Dhamma in the United States. Yeah, so, I would like to start off today by just, if I could ask everyone who can turn on their cameras to turn on their cameras. It's easier to give a Dhamma talk when you see people instead of giving a Dhamma talk to a blank screen. So, it would make my Dhamma talk a little bit more lively and easier on me if you could turn on your camera, for those of you that can. Also, I find it very... I find it very beautiful, the practice of taking refuge and the 5 precepts. So I would like to offer that for you, for everyone today. So before we begin, we'll do a Tisarana and Pansil, and you can follow along at home. I'll chat and I'll pause for a minute for you also to do it at home. And when we take the 3 refuge and 5 precepts, remember we put our hands in Anjali, nice like a little lotus, and we take the precepts. So I'll start off by saying Namo Tassa, and then 3 times, and then you can say it 3 times at home, and then I'll say Buddham Salam Gacchami, and we all kind of know how this happens, right? How this works. All right, very good. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. You can go ahead and say it at home now if you haven't already. And now we'll move on to the Tisarana, taking the 3 refuge. And we'll go line by line, so please repeat after me, okay? Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Dhammam Saranam gacchami. Sangam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Now Panchasila, please repeat after me. Panatipata veremani sikapadam samadhiyami. Adinadana veremani sikapadam samadhiyami. Tame sumicchachara veremani sikapadam samadhiyami. Musavada veremani sikapadam samadhiyami. Suramereya majapamatatana Sikkhapadana Veremani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. Now you can all say sadhu 3 times at home. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And sadhu for turning on your cameras too. This is going to make my job a lot easier with more people I can see. So thank you so much for turning on your cameras. Yes, so as CK was saying, today's topic is about social harmony, right? Based on the Dhamma, based on the teachings of the Buddha. And what does social harmony mean? It means harmonious relationships, actually. We all navigate the world through various relationships. And our Buddhahamduru, Lord Buddha, he taught us how to properly manage our relationships, right? There is a beautiful sutta called the Sigalovada Sutta or Sigalaka Sutta, where the Buddha teaches us how to properly maintain and cultivate each relationship with our parents, with our children, with our co-workers, with our boss, with monks to students and teachers to students, and even neighbors, friends to friends. Lord Buddha teaches us how to properly practice this Dhamma in everyday life, I think there's some misunderstanding sometimes about the Dhamma, right? Buddha Dhamma. We think that the Buddha Dhamma is only meditation, bhavana, right? And if we reduce the Buddha Dhamma only to bhavana, that means only monks can practice, right? And that's not the teachings of the Buddha. The teachings of the Buddha for everyone, for humans and non-humans, for the benefit of all beings, right? So that's the important thing that we need to remember. And also the teachings of the Buddha, the Dhamma, is not only about studying, right? You don't have to be a book nerd to be able to practice the Dhamma either. You don't have to be a great scholar, a pandita of the Dhamma. You have to live the Dhamma. That's the most important thing about the Dhamma, is living the Dhamma. Every thought, every word, every action, every interaction that we have with other beings, whether they're human, animals, devas, asuras, nagas, yakas, whatever they are, every interaction should be based on the Dhamma. And that's what I want to share with you today. I'm going to share with you the story of this young boy named Sigalovada, and we're going to explore, what the Buddha recommends to us, right? Some of these things we kind of have to see in a different light because we don't live in an agrarian culture, in a medieval sort of agrarian culture with kings and all those kind of things that were going on at that time. Now we live in big cities in a modern place and democracies. So some of these things might sound a bit old, but the Dhamma is not limited to any sort of container. The Dhamma is actually limitless, is boundless. It has no limits. So we can feel free to get the essence of these teachings and apply it to our everyday lives, because we have to remember that the teachings of the Dhamma are not something for people in the past. Young people sometimes think, oh, Buddhism is for my achi and my parents and not for me, right? Buddhism is for old people. Or Buddhism is for people in Lanka, back in Sri Lanka, not for me in the United States. Buddhism doesn't work, but it's not true. The Buddha said, akaliko. Akaliko means timeless, forever, right? It's applicable everywhere. That is the beauty of the Dhamma. And that's what I want to share with you today. How the Buddha told us how to live practice the Dhamma in our everyday lives. Because that's important for all of you. All of you are upasikas, right? Living everyday lives, very busy householders. In America or wherever you are trying to make a living, so many things to do. And sometimes it might feel like it's difficult to practice Dhamma. But Dhamma is more than just pujas and meditation and reading suttas and coming to the temple. You have the opportunity to practice Dhamma when you wake up, when you brush your teeth, when you have your breakfast. All of these things can be done from a Dhamma perspective. And that's actually what the Buddha told us to do. If we look at the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says when chewing, he knows that he's chewing. When arranging his robe, he knows that he's arranging his robe. He even says when going to the bathroom, one is mindful that they're going to the bathroom. What does that tell us? That we can practice this Dhamma in every aspect of our lives. So I created a presentation to share with all of you. So there's going to be a little PowerPoint here. And I'm going to go, it's a really quick and dirty kind of highlights of the Sigalovada Sutta. But first, I'm going to start off by telling the story. And at the end, I'm going to have a Q&A. Actually, the most important part is the Q&A, because I'm here for you. I want to interact with you. That's the most important part. If it was just about the sutta, I could just send you an email and you can read it yourself, right? So I'm going to just share it with you. I think some of you might already know it, but I'm really interested. I want to save more than half of the time to talk to you and answer your questions. So now I'm just going to share screen. Okay, CK, can you give me a thumbs up if it looks good? All right, good. Thank you. All right, social harmony. This is my presentation, Bhante Sanat Vihari, if you didn't catch my name in the beginning. Okay, we're going to be talking about Dhamma-based relationships, right? And this is coming from the 6 aspects or 6 dimensions of the Sigalovada Sutta. Actually, the Sigalovada Sutta is a very important sutta because it's completely dedicated to upasikas and upasikas, lay people. It's nothing to do for the monks there in this sutta. It's one of the few suttas that's only for lay people, you know? Sometimes when we read the suttas, we hear the Buddha talking to the monks, right? But this is the one of the suttas where the Buddha is only talking to a lay person. And I want to tell you something about this, how this teaching came about. So during the time of the Buddha, there was this young man named Sigalovada, right? And this young man, he was a little naughty. Please, kids, don't do what this young boy did. Every night he would sneak out of his house and he would go into the forest and he would party. So in those days, I guess young people, teenagers would go into the forest and they would play drums and they would dance and they would drink liquor. And this young boy would do that every night. And then he would sneak into his house like early in the morning, right? And his dad would come to wake him up in the morning, but his son didn't want to wake up because he was so tired from going out all night and partying. So his father was always very worried about Sigalovada, right? Oh, my son, you know, he's always sleeping in. He's very lazy. He goes out at night. People are going to spread rumors about him. Well, oh, puta, like, what's going to happen to my child? What's going to happen to my son? One day I won't be here. And what's going to happen to my son? So after some time of this happening, actually, the father got really sick. He got deadly sick. And one day he was so sick that he was getting ready to die. And at that moment, his son Sigalovada came to him and he said, Father, I'm so sorry for not listening to you my whole life. Is there anything that I can do for you, Father, before you pass away? And his father said, yes. You know what? I'm very worried about you. When I'm gone, who's going to take care of you? Who's going to protect you once I'm gone? You're always going out to party. You're always waking up late. You don't do your duties towards me, towards your family members, towards society, towards your friends. You're just always worried about you and having a good time. So I'm worried about you that when I die, something bad might happen to you. So please, he told his son, please, I want you to pay respect. I want you to venerate and worship the gods of the 6 directions. So in those days, they believed there was a God who protected the east, the north, the west, the south, the nadir, which means below, and the zenith, which means above. He says, when I'm gone, I want you every morning to wake up and pay respects, bow to the 6 directions, to these 6 gods. That way, when I'm gone, the gods will protect you. The devas will protect you. Please do this to me. And the son, you know, feeling so bad for not being a good son, he told his father, yes, I promise you, you know, on your deathbed that I will do this practice. Every day I will bow to the gods of the 6 directions. So then after a little bit of time, you know, we can imagine a few hours or at the end of the night, his father passed away. His father died. But guess what? Sigalovada still went out that night. He still went out with his friends, you know? He still went out and did everything that he did. And the next morning, he woke up late and he was worried, like, oh, I told my dad that I was going to do this. And then he went to go do it and he was rushing. He managed to do it all, but just barely on time. So when he got back home, he told one of his servants, one of the young ladies there that was working there, taking care of the house. He says, you know what? I want you to do me this big favor. Every morning, come into my room and splash a bucket of cold water on me so I can wake up. That way I can keep my promise to my father. So the young lady, his servant, said, of course, you know, Lord or Master, I'll come in and splash you with cold water every morning for you to wake up on time. So every day after that, the young servant, this young lady, would come into his room with a bucket of cold water and throw it on him, throw it on Sigalovada. And then he would wake up, he would go out, he would go into the river, he would bathe in the river because he was a Brahmin. That was part of the Brahmin practices. He would bathe in the river and then he would go out on the grass on the field, and he would bow to the gods of the six directions so he could keep his promise to his father. And he kept doing this for many days, many weeks, many months. We don't know how long. But one of these days when he was doing this, the Buddha was walking by, and it was very early in the morning. And the Buddha saw this young man. You know, you can imagine him all tired, maybe hungover if he was partying or whatever he was doing. He's all wet. You know, his clothes are all wet, and he just got out of bed, and then he walks into the river and he bathes, and he's so tired and lazy and sleepy. And then he bows to the six directions. And Lord Buddha was like, oh, this is a very interesting young man. You know, he looks like he's very tired, but he's doing this whole ritual. I wonder why he's doing that. So the Buddha went up to Sigalovada and he said, excuse me, young man, why are you doing this? What is it that you're doing? Then the young man said, oh, you know, I'm bowing to the gods of the six directions. And the Buddha said, oh, yes, that's very good. But why are you doing this? And the young man said, you know what? I wasn't a good son. When my father passed away, I promised him that I would bow to the gods of the six directions for the gods to take care of me now that my father can't take care of me. And the Buddha was like, oh, that's very good. You know, that's such a good thing for you to do. But did you know that there is a higher way, a more fruitful way, a more beneficial way to pay respects to the gods of the six directions? And Sigalovada was like, there is? And if there is, please, Venerable Sir, he told the Buddha, teach me. I want to know if there's a better way to do this, right? Because he really wants to show respect to his father and the gods. So if there is another way to do it, I would like to know. That's what Sigalovada was trying to ask the Buddha. And of course, Lord Buddha, out of his infinite wisdom and compassion, taught him these six different practices, these six different directions, how to pay homage to the six different directions. And what's interesting is that the Buddha kind of gets this ritual, this Brahminic practice that this young man is doing, and he gives it like a different dimension or a different perspective, a different way to do it, where it's not just the ritual, right? But it's going to be something that's actually going to transform this young man. Because the young man, right, he was still going out and partying, he was still waking up late. He didn't change his life. He was just doing the ritual for doing the ritual, right? And in the Buddhism, we call that Sibalata Paramasa, right? Just doing rituals blindly for no reason, ceremonies. You don't know why you're doing them. The Buddha wanted actually to help this boy and make his practice and make his vow that he gave to his father actually very beneficial. And that's what I want to share with you today. So the Buddha said, okay, this is how you worship the six directions. How do you worship the direction of the east, right? How do you worship the east direction? And here's we come into the relationship of parents and children, right? It's very interesting, right? The Buddha says this first. Why? Because this young man made a promise to his father. So right from the beginning, the Buddha wants to teach him something that's directly for him, that connects with him, right? That pertains to his situation. He made a promise to his father, right? And he laments not being a good son. So the Buddha is going to start off by teaching him how to be a good son, and also the roles of a good father. What's a good father according to the teachings of the Buddha? So the Buddha says, this is directly from the Sigalovada Sutta. It says, a child should serve their parents as the Eastern Quarter in 5 ways, thinking, I will support those who supported me, right? Your parents took care of you. You should take care of them. I'll do my duty for them, which also involves taking care of them, serving them, and doing all these nice things for them. I'll maintain the family lineage. Family lineage is like tradition, right? So many of you are not living in Sri Lanka anymore. You know, so now you are the people who are in charge of preserving your culture, the Sinhalese culture, Sinhalese language, Sinhalese dance, Sinhalese food. That is part of your duty towards your family, towards your parents, to preserve that Sinhalese culture. I'll take care of my inheritance, right? So your parents, when they pass away, you're going to end up with their house or whatever money they left for you or other things, right? And it's your responsibility to protect that, right? To use it skillfully and not just throw it away. And I'll make an offering on their behalf, right? And this is where when parents pass away, we get the pouring of water. Many kids don't understand that, right? Why do we pour water? Why do we do these pinkam pujas and all this punya kama? I don't understand. Well, the Buddha is instructing us here in this very sutta that is our responsibility when our parents pass away for us to do some punya kama for them, some meritorious action. And meritorious action is not only limited to like serving the monks and coming to the temple. actually doing anything beneficial in their name. If you were to donate money to charity in your parents' name, if you were to help your neighbors in your parents' name, if you were to feed someone or feed an animal in your parents' name, that's also punya karma. That's good karma, right? So when your parents pass away, when you do good things in this, when you continue to do good things in your life, you should include them and say, you know, I dedicate this action, this punya karma in the name of my departed parents. That is our duty as children to our parents, the Buddha said. But you know, it's not a one-way relationship. Parents also have a duty to kids, right? The Buddha is very clear on this, that parents have a duty, have responsibilities to properly take care and educate their kids, and we're going to see what they are. It says, parents served by the children in these 5 ways, show compassion to them in these 5 ways. They keep them from doing bad. Very important, right? Sometimes we think our parents are very mean and they're cruel. They don't let us hang out with our friends. They don't buy us the newest iPhone or etc., whatever. But it's their responsibility to stop us from going down the wrong path, right? If they don't do that, they're going against Buddha. So they have to do this. They have to protect us from doing bad. They support them in doing good. So also when you do good, right? When you get good grades, when you clean the house, when you do all your duties, it is your parents' responsibility to congratulate you, right? Oh, Buddha, you did such a good job. That's so nice that you did that. I'm so proud of you. Congratulate your children. Instead of parents, please don't compare your children to other kids, right? Don't do that part because that hurts the kids. But congratulate them when they do good. You know, that's also the parents' duty. To train them in a profession, right? So it is the parents' duty to make sure that the children get a good education, get good training, whether that's in a trade school or whether that's in a university or maybe in the arts, whatever it is the parents' responsibility to make sure that the children get a proper education, right? That they can get a job. They connect them with suitable partners. So it's the parents' responsibility also to kind of filter the people that you come across with, right? If you're gonna date someone when you get older or when you think about marriage when you're older, actually it's the parents' responsibility to give you their opinion, right? About what they think and if this person's gonna work out for you. Because sometimes, I mean, it's very obvious. We have a saying in English, right? Love is blind. You can't see properly sometimes. You might need your parents' help a little bit to kind of guide you in this process of making a lifelong commitment. You know, marriage is not an easy thing. It's something that you do for the rest of your life. It's a big commitment. It's a connection between families. And it's the parents' responsibility to help their children choose a proper partner. And the parents should transfer their inheritance in due time, right? So the parents, once the kids fulfill all their duties, I mean, the parents don't have to pass away. In this very life, the parents should somehow help their children, right? Transfer some sort of inheritance, give something to their children once the children have completed their duties, like their education, their job, and they got married. And, you know, once they reach that point of life, it's the parents' responsibility to support them, to support their children in this new life and their new family that they created for themselves, right? So we see this dual relationship of kids supporting parents, children supporting parents, and parents supporting children. It goes both ways, right? It's a harmonious relationship, a symbiotic relationship, actually, right? That's the beautiful thing. It's not like patriarchal, it's not hierarchical where it's just one way, right? Just do what the parents say and parents can do whatever they want. No, parents also have a responsibility to treat you well, to treat you with compassion and kindness, right? And to look out for you. It's a two-way street. And then the Buddha told Sigalovada, there's the southern direction, right? This is the way you pay the respect to the southern direction according to the Arya Dhamma. And he says, a student, now we're talking about students and teachers, right? So whether you're in elementary, middle school, high school, and university, wherever you're at, we have responsibilities to our teachers, and our teachers have responsibility to towards us, according to the Buddha's teachings. It says a student should serve their teacher as the southern quarter in 5 ways, right? So there's 5 ways a student serves and supports their teacher. By rising for them, right? So when they come in, you show some sort of respect. Maybe today we don't stand up in class anymore, but hello, Mr. or hello, Mrs. or hello, Professor or hello, Doctor, whatever. You greet them in some way, right? As soon as they walk in, you greet them. By serving them, right? If the professor needs help with something, cleaning the board, cleaning the room, moving the chairs around, the teacher, you also help them, right? You serve them. You make life easier for them because they're doing something for you. They're sharing knowledge. They're sharing experience with you. By listening well to them. Please don't be on your phones and on your laptops on the internet when you're in class, right? Don't be falling asleep or eating snacks. You need to be focused on listening to the teachings, listening to the instructions. That is your duty as a student, according to the teachings of the Buddha. And by looking after them, right? By looking after the teacher, right? So you're mindful of the teacher. If there's anything that can harm the teacher, if there's anyone that's trying to hurt the teacher, if there's anything dangerous in the classroom, you also keep your eyes open to let the teacher know what's going on in case there's any danger, any dangerous things. And by carefully learning their profession, right? So it's your duty to not only listen and help the teacher, but actually retain the information, right? As a student, you're there to learn and retain that information and to be able to perform it or to be able to pass a test, or I don't know, maybe there's like a group work, or you have to write a paper, whatever it is, it's your responsibility to show that you learned whatever the teacher told you as a student. But again, the teachers also have, a responsibility towards their students. It says teachers serve their students in these 5 ways. They show compassion to them in 5 ways. They make sure they're well educated and well drilled in memorization, right? So it's the teacher's responsibility to teach you and make sure that you retain the information, right? It's not only your responsibility, it's a shared responsibility. Between both of you, you need to work on learning and retaining the information. They clearly explain the knowledge of profession, right? So it's a teacher's responsibility to go through the math problem and tell you how to solve that equation. It's the teacher's responsibility to go through all the facts, all the historical facts in the history class, right? The teacher has the responsibility to show you how to properly do the whole thing, to properly explain the knowledge for you to understand. It's also the teacher's responsibility to introduce them to friends and colleagues. And what this means is, like, nowadays you might get a letter of endorsement, right? In university, you might get a letter of endorsement from your professor. It's the teacher's responsibility to write letters of endorsement or to help the student network with other people in their profession, right? And they also provide protection in every region. Here's very amazing, especially very important for our time when schools can be a bit dangerous, high schools and middle schools, because of all of these crazy things that are going on. It is the teacher's responsibility for the safety of the kids in the class, right? So the teacher is responsible to protect the students in the classroom, right? It's their responsibility. It's just like if they were parents now. In the same way that a parent would risk their own life, right, and put themselves in danger to protect their children, a teacher has to be like a parent also. And they need to be there to protect the children and to protect the students. All right, we're almost halfway now. To the west direction. What's the west direction? A husband and wife, right? Couples, partners. A husband should serve his wife as the western quarter in 5 ways. All right. So how should a husband treat his wife? By treating her with honor. Very important, right? To honor her. That means to respect her. By not looking down on her, right? Equal partnership. You're not the boss in the relationship. You have to treat her like an equal partner. By not being unfaithful to her, right? No cheating, none of these kind of betrayals. By relinquishing authority to her, giving her some authority in the house, right? Nowadays, most of the authority is shared, right? Both parents work, the husband and the wife, both of them work, and both of them take care of things at house, and both of them take care of the kids. So it's a lot easier now, right? I think nowadays it's very easy for this sharing of authority, sharing of responsibility. It's something that comes very natural to us now, especially like in these times and in the West. It's a little bit easier to kind of follow this one. And by presenting her with adornments. So the Buddha says that it's the husband's responsibility to get his wife nice things, right? Like flowers and jewelry and dresses and all these nice things. That's part of the man's responsibility, also the husband's responsibility. But we're in modern times now too, right? So we can also say the wife also has a responsibility of treating the husband and getting him adornments and nice things. And now the other way around, right? A wife is served by her husband in these 5 ways, shows compassion in these 5 ways. She's well organized in her work. So we're talking about in these days, mostly women didn't have careers, didn't have jobs, right? They were at home. So it was her responsibility, right? To organize the work around the house, or to organize the ranch or the farm or the whatever, if they were craftsmen or if they were carpenters, whatever was going on at home, whatever kind of business, it was her job to kind of make sure that everything's tidy and everything's in its place. She manages the domestic help, right? So she's also in charge of all the servants or the nannies or whatever's going on in the house, whoever's helping. Also, like the husband, she shouldn't be unfaithful, right? She preserves his earnings. So it's the wife's responsibility here to make sure that her husband doesn't spend all the money, right? So that, what does that mean? That the money should be given to the wife to hold and not the husband. That's the way it was done in those days, you know? But now everything's like joint accounts and stuff like that. But still, I think it's a good thing where there's this kind of monitoring or respecting and helping each other to make sure that everyone's in agreement about how the money's being spent, right? And not just unilaterally making decision, I'm going to spend the money how I want to spend it. She's deft and tireless in her duties, right? So the woman is just like the man would in those days would wake up every day to go plow the fields or work with the cattle or be a carpenter every day, nonstop. It was also the woman's responsibility in those days to every day, right, take care of the house. But now both the husband and wife can share the responsibility, both at work, making sure that both of them are very persistent and trying to make a better life for themselves, which I know so many Sri Lankan and Sinhalese families are, right? Working so hard to provide a better life for their partner and a better life for their children. So this is one of the 5 things that it's not really that big of a deal. And I've seen Sinhalese people do really well on this one, helping each other out and tirelessly working. All right, we're past the halfway mark now. What is the north direction? A gentleman, right? So just a person, a man or a woman in society, should serve his friends and colleagues as the northern quarter and 5. So how should we treat our neighbors? How should we treat our friends? How should we treat our co-workers, right? Our colleagues? How do we treat them? By giving, practicing dana, right? We give to them too. Dana is not only for monks. You should practice giving to your friends, colleagues, and neighbors. By using kind words, right? Speaking to them nicely. By taking care of them. Take care of your friends, take care of your colleagues, take care of your co-workers, take care of your neighbors. Treating everyone equally, right? There's no favorites. There shouldn't be any favorites between your friends and your colleagues and co-workers. You should treat everyone equally. That doesn't mean that you cannot like one person more than the other. Yes, you're naturally going to like some of your friends more than others, but you should treat everyone equally, regardless if you like them more or not. And not using tricky words, right? So we have to be very careful with our musavada, right? Our proper speech. We make sure that we don't try to trick them in any way or say bad words or gossip with them or any of these kind of things, right? We're very skillful with our speech with our friends. And then how should our friends treat us in return, right? How should our colleagues and neighbors treat us in return as good Buddhists? They guard them when they're negligent, right? So if your friend, your neighbor, your colleague sees you doing something that's wrong, I mean, they're going to try to protect you. They should try to protect you, right? They also try to protect your property, right? If you're not at home and they see your house on fire or someone breaking in, they'll call the police, they'll call the firefighters, they'll give you a call. Hey, look, someone's broken into your car, someone's broken into your house, or something's going on, right? Someone took your phone, whatever it is the good friend's responsibility, the good neighbor's responsibility to point that out and to try to help you. They keep him safe in times of danger, right? A friend in need is a friend indeed. That's what the Buddha says in the part of the friends, which I'm not covering here. The Buddha has a whole section on like what are good friends, what are kalyanamitas. The most important one is that the friend is there when you really need them, right? And that's what it says next. They don't abandon him in times of trouble. So when you're in danger, when you really need a friend, your real friends will show up, and that's how you know who your friends are. And they honor his descendants, right? So your friends take care of your children. Your friends take care of your family. They help take care of your family too. Nowadays in the US, it's a bit different because we live in all these small families, apartments, no one knows each other. But traditional Buddhist cultures, there's this saying, right? It takes a village to raise a child. And that's what was happening. And that's what the Buddha wanted. He wanted everyone, everyone, all the neighbors, all the friends, everyone that worked together to support each other and to take care of each other's children, right? And to honor their families, to protect their families. All right, 2 more left. Nadir, downwards. What's the down direction? Here it talks about the bosses and the employees, right? Or in those days, sometimes they would say master and servants. So it says a boss should serve their workers in these 5 ways. By organizing work according to ability, right? So these are the good traits of a good boss, right? To be able to give a person, the employee, a job which they can do well. You don't want to put the employee in a job or in a position where they don't know what they're doing. They're not very good at it. You want to put them in a place where they're going to thrive and do well, because it's going to be good for that person's self-esteem. They're going to have a great time working there. And also you're going to have your business is going to be a lot better because it's more efficient, right? So you want to assign the workers, the servants, whoever it is, a job that matches up with their abilities to do it. By paying food and wages, right? So there's no free labor, right? The people shouldn't be exploited, the Buddha is saying. if you have someone under your employment, you are to properly pay them, whether it's in money and food or both money and food. It is the boss's, the employer's responsibility to properly pay their workers by nursing them when they are sick. This is very interesting. You know, what the Buddha is advocating here for is like it is this employer's responsibility that the employee gets healthcare, right? So the healthcare part is the employer's, the boss's responsibility. The company's responsibility has to provide. The company has to provide you with healthcare. We don't do that here in the United States necessarily, right? It's kind of a different system that we have here. But if you know, to the extent that we can, companies and bosses can contribute to the employee's healthcare plan. That would be the ideal thing here. And by sharing treats, right? By sharing treats means anything excess that the boss has or the company has in access, they should be able to share, like sharing profits or sharing goods or sharing extra things that the company can or the boss can with their employees. And by giving time off of work, right? That's so important that the Buddha advocated for people to have days off, right? So a good employer, a good boss, regardless of what the law says, wherever you're at in the world, should be given days off. So nice. The Buddha was so progressive, right? Free healthcare, bonuses, time off. We should have listened to him thousands of years ago. Maybe we would have been in a better world. Workers and servants serve their and served by their masters. How do the employees respect or show gratitude towards their bosses or employer or the company? They get up first, they go to bed last. What does that mean? That you show up before you have to show up, and you don't try to sneak out before the time is done, right? You don't steal. They do their work well, and they promote a good reputation, right? So you talk about the good things in your company. You share with others the benefits that your company or your boss or whatever your job is contributing to society. You make sure that you do your job well. You're not stealing time. You're not stealing wages. You're not stealing materials from your job, right? And you show up on time and you leave on time, right? Very important. That's what the Buddha is saying here. And we come to the last direction, the zenith, that means above. And who is here? The priest and the mendicants or the ascetics. What does that mean? It means like the monks, Buddhist monks and priests at that time, which were the Brahmins. And it says, a gentleman should serve ascetics and Brahmins as the upper quarter in these 5 ways. By loving deeds of body, speech, and mind. By not turning them away at the gate and by providing them with material needs. So how should an upasika treat bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, right? What's the relationship between lay Buddhists and monastics? Between the bhikkhu sangha, right? The lay person should speak nicely, think nicely, and act nicely towards the monastics, towards the monks, towards the hamdrus, and not kick them away when the monks come and visit, right? Opening their doors up to the sangha. And also by providing them with material needs, which is just for us, robes, maybe this fan, food, water, and a vihara, somewhere to live, right? That's the responsibility of the lay people towards the monks. But the monks also have a responsibility towards the lay people, right? It says, ascetics and Brahmins served by a gentleman in these 5 ways should show compassion to him in these 6 ways. They keep them from doing bad, right? So it is our responsibility as monks, as spiritual leaders, to point out to you when you might be doing something that's akusala, that's something that's not so good, right? We have to help you to avoid you doing all bad, right? Sabe papasa akaranam, right? It is our job to help you from stop doing bad. Sabe papasa akaranam. They support him in doing good. So whenever you want to do good, we encourage you. Yes, please give. Yes, please take the Panchasila. Yes, please study the suttas. Yes, please meditate. Yes, please be compassionate and be kind. Be a good member of society and treat your friends and family well, right? So these Dhamma talks are part of my duties as a monk that I have to fulfill to all of you, right? I just can't lock myself in my room or be out in the forest and do my own thing. I have responsibilities and duties towards the Sangha of Upasikas and Upasikas. They think of him with kindly thoughts, right? So we also have to think nicely of you. We shouldn't think bad about you, whether you give us rice or whether you give us nice food or whether we have a little kuti or we have a beautiful vihara, like 2 or 3 story vihara. We should always think nicely of you. They teach him what he does not know, right? So it's our responsibility to share the Dhamma with him. And they clarify what's already learned, right? Like we're going to do in the Q&A here. it is my responsibility to have a Q&A section for all of you, right? I just didn't come up with it. The Buddha's telling me as a monk that I have to set some time for you for question and answers. And they explain the path to heaven, right? Which is the way of dana, the way of doing good deeds is the way to heaven. So I have to encourage you in giving because giving is good. And I have to encourage you in sila because sila is good. And also the path to heaven, a really easy way to get to heaven is by practicing the Brahma Viharas, by practicing bhavana. So we encourage you to practice meditation, right? So dana, sila, and bhavana is our duty as monks to share with you, to practice this, to explain to you so you're able to go to heaven. All right, now my favorite thing, to have questions. And look what the Buddha said about questions. Of course you are inserting kalamas. Of course you are in doubt. When there are reasons for doubt, uncertainty is born, right? Kalama Sutta. It's good to have questions. If you're confused, if you have doubt, no worries. That's not a bad sign in Buddhism. It's actually a great thing, right? To have questions and to have doubts. So now I would like to open up the floor for the Q&A because I think I spoke long enough. All right. You can raise your digital hand or you can raise your real hand or however we want to do this.
All right, I'll go ahead and ask a question, Bhante.
Yes.
Just to start here. So you talked about us as lay people and being able to, look after our neighbors, look after our coworkers, pretty much like doing good things for them, right? At some point or the other, we all dealt with difficult people. What's the Buddhist perspective when it comes to dealing with difficult people and being able to practice compassion when dealing with a difficult person?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you put out your trash and your neighbor moves your trash, right? Or something like that. Or the neighbors are very noisy. They're having a party next door. Like, how do you deal with those obnoxious neighbors? Or, when your coworkers being mean to you and they touch your things in your cubicle and stuff like that. So that's something that can happen, right? You might be trying to practice the Dhamma and then there's people who make it difficult for you. So we always have to view everything through the lens of compassion. So the primary thing we want to avoid is hatred. That's the number one thing, right? The number one thing is avoid hatred. You don't have to keep doing good things for them. You don't have to keep speaking nice to them. If you see that this person is not giving you any good feedback, if the person is not interested, if they're harmful towards you, you don't have to keep doing these things. So the Buddha is not forcing us, right, into these harmful relationships. But what the Buddha does say to us in many suttas is that we shouldn't harbor any hatred or anger in our hearts and our minds, right? So if your neighbor, you're trying to help them and they just keep being mean or they don't want to talk to you, okay, that's fine. You don't have to help them anymore. They told you that they don't want to, right? That's fine. But we should never let their bad manners or bad speech or them ignoring us lead us to fall into anger and hatred, right? That's one thing that should be completely avoided. So we don't have to go around trying to save the world and save our neighbors if they don't want our help. But at a bare minimum, what we should do is not have hatred or resentment towards them. So when you see anger arise in your mind, you have to think, who does this anger serve? Like, is this going to help me with this person, this anger? Is it going to help me? Does this anger help anyone? Like, actually, no, anger doesn't feel good. Like, it's just making me feel worse. And no matter how angry I am, the person's not going to change anyways, right? And they may actually be getting some gratification from me being angry and upset. They might like it. Maybe that was their whole point, to upset me, and that makes them feel good. So you want to avoid that situation. So what I would say very practically is, once you've tried to the extent that you can try, then just move away. Just move away. There's a beautiful sutta called the Rhinoceros Sutta. And there the Buddha says, if you cannot find any good companions, walk alone like the horn of a rhinoceros in the forest, right? So the Buddha does tell us, right? We try to practice compassion, but there's some people who don't want it. So when those people don't want it, we just move away. And when we move away, we have to make sure that we're not moving away from hatred, right? Like, I'm not going to talk to them because they're a jerk. I'm not going to talk to them because, etc., whatever bad thoughts you have about them. When you see that thought, that this thought is not going to help me at all with this person. Just get rid of the thought and be like, I just won't do what I used to do with them. So that would be like a very practical, simple approach where you don't really have to like go read a bunch of things or do hours of meditation, right? Or try to be like a savior and try to save your neighbors and friends when they treat you bad. We don't want to put ourselves in in unnecessary difficult situations.
Thank you. I appreciate the response.
Swamin Wahansa, I have a question.
Yes.
Let's think of situation where the employer, the boss, is mistreating the employees or even stealing at work. Today, what usually happens is if an employee notices that he or she would just report to HR about that employer. Instead of taking a drastic measure like that, what could an employee do? Given that there is a power disparity between the two, how could an employee approach the employer about that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a very tough situation, right? When there's that imbalance of power, right? Where one person holds all the power and you hardly hold any. It's very difficult. So there's two things, right? One is that the Buddha's never telling us that we always have to speak the truth. The Buddha just said, don't tell lies, right? The Buddha says we only speak the truth if it's beneficial, right? If it's the right time, and we have to try to say it in a nice way. If it doesn't meet these categories, then we shouldn't speak the truth, right? We definitely should never lie and speak bad. The Buddha says never do that. But the Buddha is not forcing us to always tell the truth. So there may be situations where the power dynamic is so unbalanced, and when you're in a vulnerable position that if you report it, you might lose your job, and then how are you going to take care of your family? There might be reprisals. You know, you might have to keep quiet for some time until when you feel that it's safe for you to say something, right? So, but at the same time, this doesn't mean that we should fall into compliance. You know, there's different degrees of of bad things that can happen at work, right? Like stealing and things like that. But I feel like if it ever comes to violence, or maybe like something really bad when someone else's their life or their family is being drastically impacted by whatever the boss is doing, the employer is doing, then in those times, I feel that it's the time to tell the truth, and we just have to be ready to face the consequences, because us being quiet in those times is leading to others suffer. So yes, maybe we're not suffering, but like we're saying it's okay. The other person can suffer for me, right? Like we're just pushing it to someone else. And that person probably most likely, if they see you stand up and say something, they'll back you up too, right? So another thing is to like get together with others and use the power that you have, the power of truth, right? The Buddha said that there's three things that cannot be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. These things will always come out at some point, right? So we may have to wait, right? We have to wait maybe 8 hours or 10 hours for the sun to come out or for the moon to come out every day, right? But it's going to come out. So maybe when we know the truth that an employer is doing something corrupt or doing something bad, we might have to be like the sun or the moon and wait some hours, right? Or wait some days or weeks. But we have the intention that when I feel safe, when it's safe here, I will tell the truth, right? So that's how I would kind of manage this situation.
Thank you for explaining that to me, Swamin Wahansa.
So Bhante, thank you for the Dhamma talk. So I have a question kind of related to the previous question. So if an employee doing something not acceptable, and if we have to complain to someone else, maybe a higher hierarchy, and by complaining, if that employee is getting into trouble and maybe losing the job, so then how do we handle that kind of situation? So then, for example, someone might hesitate to complain or report that kind of situation because that employee might get into that trouble and maybe lose the job. So how do we handle that kind of situation?
You know, my personal perspective, and actually this is in the suttas, the advice that the father gives to his daughter. I forget, she's a princess, I forget her name, but he gives some advice to his daughter before she gets married, right? So when she goes to her father's house, he says, don't spread rumors, don't do all these things. Usually, I forget the story, but most Sri Lankan people know the story about the advice that the father gives to his daughter before she moves into the other person's house. There, the Buddha says that, you know, when a problem arises, that we should try to solve it in the family first, you know, before it goes out. So if you feel safe, if you feel comfortable, you should approach that person and let them know, hey, you know, I know what you're doing and you should stop. That's all you have to say. I know what you're doing and you should stop, right? Now, if they continue, what they're telling you is like, basically, I don't care, right? I don't care that you know, and I'm going to keep doing bad things. Then at that moment, it'd be, you know, you could take it to the next level, like human resources or the boss, or maybe even the police, whatever it is. But that person was given an opportunity to change their ways. I mean, that's even how we handle things in the Bhikkhu Sangha. When a monk does something, all the other monks will get together, we'll come in a circle, and we'll say, hey, is it true that you did this, right? And we let them know that they need to stop. Don't do this anymore. And if they do it again, then they have to leave. You can't stay in this temple anymore, right? So this is the way we organize the Bhikkhu Sangha, how we deal with problematic monks, or when monks are a little naughty. We let them know first, and then after that, we kick them out, or we might have to call the cops, depending. Who knows, right? That could happen in some situations. So in a situation like that, where you're like, well, if I report my fellow employee, he might lose his job and it'll affect his family. You can go up to him and you say, I know what you're doing, and as a friend, I recommend that you stop, right? And if they keep doing it, then it's very reasonable, I feel. Very reasonable to be able to tell a boss or something, and for you to be blameless in mind and not feel any guilt, because you let them know you're not doing it behind their back, right? You told them, you gave them the opportunity to change, and they don't want to change. And also what they're doing is affecting the company, affecting other people too, right? So it's not like a victimless crime. Other people are being affected. We just can't see it. So that person is knowingly doing something bad, and they don't care about other beings. They only care about themselves in this moment, or their own family. So that would be my personal approach to these kind of situations.
Thank you, Bhante.
All right, we are almost at the end of the call. I think our allotted time is running out.
So,
If you guys
Charit,
don't have...
can I ask one more thing?
Go ahead.
Bhante, I think we are kind of curious, maybe at least me, how you became a Buddhist monk. Is it that possible for you to explain briefly?
Yeah, I thought I was going to escape. I was this close. Yeah. So, you know, I was so fortunate to grow up in such a diverse community. So I grew up in Los Angeles, California, in the Koreatown district. And in this Koreatown district, not only is there Koreans, but there's Chinese, there's Vietnamese, there's Thai. So the Buddhism was always around me, and a lot of my friends in school were Buddhists, right? But I would ask them, like, oh, what is Buddhism? And they're like, oh, we just light candles and, you know, do offerings. And none of my friends could really explain what Buddhism was. They would just tell me like what their parents made them do, you know, like when I was raised Catholic. So I don't think I could really ever explain Catholicism. I would just be like, well, I just go to church and I pray. Like, I don't know, you know? So I never got a really good answer on what Buddhism was until I got to high school. And then when I got into high school, I was surrounded actually by a lot of Thai people, because my high school, Hollywood High School, is down the street from Thai Town. So there's like where most of the Thais immigrated to in beginning in Los Angeles. And then also I had a very good friend, and she was Vietnamese and she was Buddhist too. And she taught me a little bit about like Mahayana Buddhism. But I also began to read a lot of books about Buddhism at that time. So that's really in high school when I started learning about the Noble Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, and things like that. But I was still very immature, right? So I really liked that idea and I liked Buddhism, but it was very difficult for me to practice at that time, especially because I didn't have Sangha, right? I didn't have Sangha, I didn't know monks, I just had books and some friends that were Buddhists, but they didn't really know how to explain it or practice it well. Then when I was like around 20 years old, when I was 20 years old, I went to like a Thai temple twice, Wat Thai in LA, but no one knew English, you know? And I tried going to temples, but no one spoke English well, so it was very difficult for me to learn anything. They would just give me books, and I already had books, so I just kept reading. And then when I was 20, when I was almost 21, 20, and it was like December before my birthday, 3 months before my birthday, I left to the Air Force, right? And I was in the Air Force for 9 years. And it was about in 2010. Yeah, in 2010. And I joined the Air Force in 2006. So like 4 years later, I came across the videos of Ajahn Brahm, right? Ajahn Brahmavanzo from Australia. And I just fell in love with like how he would talk the Dhamma. He was so funny, very direct, like for normal people's problems. He wasn't trying to teach us Abhidhamma or anything like that, you know? He was just like, for regular people's lives, I'm sharing the Dhamma. And I would stay up all night watching Ajahn Brahm. Like, I just loved his Dhamma talks. Every day I was watching Ajahn Brahm. And then I started looking for temples around my house. And I found this Sri Lankan vihara down the street called Sarath Chandra Buddhist Center. So I started going there, going to the meditation programs and going to the Dhamma talks. And then about after a year of going to Sarath Chandra Buddhist Center, I asked the monks that I told the monks actually, please give me the Tisarana and Pansil. And I took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. I think that was like 2012. The dates are get difficult to remember. Around 2012, I think, sometime like that. I took the precepts and the refuges. And then I got deployed the last time to Afghanistan for the 3rd time. And I decided to practice Dhamma in Afghanistan. Every day I would read a verse from the Dhammapada, and every day I would meditate. And it really changed my life. It made being there so much easier than the other times when I was all stressed out. So when I came back, I went on a meditation retreat, and then it just hit me on that meditation retreat that like I wanted to be a monk. I wanted to be a Hamdru. And then I told the monks at my temple at Sarath Chandra Buddhist Center that I wanted to be a monk. And they kind of just laughed, you know, oh, this American boy, whatever, you know, they just laughed at me. And I brought it up every month. Every month I'd bring it up. And I think it was after like 3 or 4 months, they said, okay, let's see. So it took a whole year. After a year of me telling them that I wanted to be a Hamdru, they said, okay, you can come stay with us. So then I had to sell my house. I had to sell my car. I had to get out of the Air Force. I had to ask permission from my mom, and she was crying. I had to break up with my girlfriend because I had a girlfriend too at the time. So I had to let everything go, you know? I had to let my career go. I was a staff sergeant in the Air Force. I was doing really well. I was in the best shape of my life. But I just fell in love with the Dhamma, you know, and with the Buddha and his teachings. I really loved reading the suttas. I felt like the Buddha was talking to me. I always could put myself there. I have a good imagination. My mom would always say, you have such an imagination. You just think all these crazy things. But me, when I read the suttas, I could put myself there with the Buddha and all the monks, and I could envision myself there and all the devas and all the people there. And yeah, so just my love for the Buddha and the Buddhist monks too. The Sinhalese monks know perfect English, right? That's the great thing about Sri Lankan monks, that they speak English, so that makes it a lot easier. And they're so nice, you know, like Sri Lankan monks go all over the world trying to share the Dhamma with other people, you know, not only for their own community. So they were so warm-hearted. And the Sri Lankan people too, like all the achis there, always trying to feed me, even when I wasn't a monk. And everyone was so friendly there, you know? And yeah, so then in 2015, I took my papaja. I became a samanera, as the bio said. And then in 2018, I went to Sri Lanka, and I got ordained at Maharagama Bhikkhu Training Center outside of Colombo, right there. And yeah, and since then until now, I've been living at the Sarath Chandra Buddhist Center. I've been with the Sri Lankan community for the last 8 years. And I finished my 5 years on dependence. Every monk should spend 5 years with their teacher. And I spent 5 years with my teacher, and now I'm traveling the world, sort of, and sharing the Dhamma with others. And then I'll go back to my temple once I do my charika, right? My sharing the Dhamma.
Thank you. So, Bhante, are you planning to come back to New Mexico soon?
Yes, I'm trying to go sometime in November, you know, 1st and 2nd week of November. I'm going to be, I think, going directly to Santa Fe. I have something to do there. But either before or after whatever, I have to do a series of Dhamma talks in Santa Fe. I could go before, I could go down to Albuquerque because I love that train. You know, that train from Albuquerque to Santa Fe is so beautiful. I think I rode it 6 times when I was there because it was so nice. And so that's an easy thing to do. So hopefully in November, if everything goes, you know, if we have good karma, I'll be joining all of you in the first or second week.
we will love to host you for Dhamma talk and alms giving.
Oh, good.
I can get information from Charit. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, we'll just go ahead and wrap up the call. Before I wrap up the call, Bhante asked me to talk to you guys about his upcoming event on the 24th. I have the link and everything. I'll be sharing that with Mr. Manaka, so he can share that on our Facebook page for the Sri Lankans in New Mexico. Bhante, would you be able to share a little bit about that event so that way everybody understand what the event is about, what the talk's going to be about?
Yes, so as a Buddhist monk, many people come to you, right? And they share their problems with you and what's going on in their life. And for many years, I've been wanting to do something, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it yet. But after I got my master's in counseling psychology and I did my 1-year internship and I took all these different trainings to be certified in mindfulness teachings, and finding other people in the community, like I have 2 other people that are supporting me in this event who are co-directing it with me. One is a young lady, her name's Stephanie, and she's a clinical psychologist, and she's actually been going to my temple since she was in high school. I've seen her for the last 9 or 10 years going there, and now she's a therapist. So I'm so proud of her, like getting her bachelor's, getting her master's, and now going out there and helping people in the community. So she also, growing up, she knows the struggles and the difficulties that young people are facing as immigrants, South Asian Americans in the United States, and all the pressures of like living between 2 cultures and discrimination and the stress of school and work, and you have to be successful and make money, and how the economy is like so difficult right now. So we also want to talk about that. We want to talk about the Sri Lankan American immigrant experience, right? It's specifically Buddhist, from a Buddhist perspective. And also Bhante Kusala, who graduated from Harvard's divinity program and also has a master's in Pali. I'm not sure if it's Kalinia University or Paradini. I forgot which one he graduated from in Sri Lanka, but he has a master's degree in Pali and a master's of divinity from Harvard. And he also did a 1-year chaplaincy as a clinical chaplain in a hospital. So us 3 are coming together and we're doing this event where we're going to talk about these topics that are relevant to Sri Lankan American Buddhist mental health, right? Talking about stigma, how there might be stigma about like seeking professional help, talking to your doctor about your depression and anxiety, talking to your parents about mental health, right? Talking to the monks about mental health, right? Telling other Sri Lankan people, right, about mental health. Like, so we really want to spread awareness. And I think it's so lovely that, we have Bhante Kusala, amazing Sri Lankan monk that's going to be joining us. We have also a layperson, a young lady who grew up in the Sri Lankan American immigrant experience, right? She's gone through all the troubles and all the difficult things. And she's also a therapist. She's going to be helping us out. And then me too, kind of like in the community, but not actually Sri Lanka, which gives me a different perspective. Sometimes I've noticed that a lot of young Sinhalese boys and girls feel more comfortable sharing things with me than with like the older Hamdrus, right? Because they're like, oh, he's American, he has a different way of understanding things. So we're kind of bringing all of this together to make a soup and to kind of help people, and try to just share information. So it's going to be an 1.5 hour long talk with a Q&A, 30-minute Q&A, where we're really trying to get the conversation going. We want this to be a bigger project. We want to offer one-on-one later in the future counseling opportunities. We want to offer groups. We want to offer hikes. We want to offer more psychoeducation online, more seminars. We already got other people that we can invite to these events that be sharing more on mental health from like a clinical perspective or from like social work perspective and things like that. So it's really a great opportunity, for parents and children and for family members to come and join and talk about something that people don't want to talk about in a safe place where you have permission from the Hamdrus and you have permission from people who know about this, who worked in the field. So this is really an invitation for everyone to come here and learn about mental health and how important it is, and to talk about the difficult things.
So is it something on Zoom or is it in-person event?
It's going to be on Zoom. Yes. So I forgot to share that. It's going to be on Zoom, and it's just going to be like this, but on Zoom. And since we're focusing just on information, we're also going to, I think, live stream it on Facebook. But we're going to have separate events where everything's going to be confidential and it'll just be like a closed group. But this first session is more like information where we'll be sharing statistics and what you can do and resources and techniques and just kind of like a 101 about mental health.
All right, we'll just go ahead and end the call. Thank you so much, Bhante, again for agreeing to do this. We really appreciate it. And again, I also want to thank you, everybody that's joined the call today. And yeah, with that, you all have a good rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Charit, for organizing this. Thanks.